Hey, it's Gilbite here. In this video, I'm going to show you how I did the body work on this hood, which had a nice dent right here where somebody had apparently sat on it, and it had a lot of chips and things in it. So this video is going to be just on the bodywork portion, not paint. I'm going to do the paint in a different video, as this would be way too long. Also, I'm going to try to keep it down to the key things, the tips and tricks that are going to save you money and time on this. I'll make it as short as I can and keep the significant things in. Now, if you have a hood with a dent, so what you want to do is using a hammer dolly, hammer out as much as you can first. Then you see all this, the skeleton here? If it is separated from the sheet metal, after you have hammered it out, you then want to re-glue this. And I went a little overboard, but you'll want to re-glue this before you do the Bondo part. Otherwise, the sheet metal will be prone to vibrating at high speed and things, and that's gonna potentially cause it to break apart, your Bondo. I then took and sanded down the metal anywhere where there was a paint defect. So a lot of these were just like chips, and I just sanded them all the way down the metal. I then, since I knew I was going to be a little bit working on it, I hit it with some etch primer, keep it from rusting. And next, I then took some dry guide coat and I put on here in this section where the dent was, because there weren't any other dents, and I sanded it in a X pattern to see where the low spots are. Now, if you don't have any dry guide coat, take some darker, take a contrasting color of paint and just dust it and then sand it. Whatever the paint doesn't come off, that's your low spots. If there are spots that come off immediately, those are high spots. You may need to knock the high spots down just a touch, and if the low spots are too low, then go ahead and pound them back up. But you can see this is actually really close. So now I know where the low spots are, and I'm gonna take a picture, because I know I'm going to forget some of them. When you're using a body filler, you really want to have, one, it's 80 grit, two, you want to have it down to metal. If you can have it down to metal, some of them actually literally have to be down to metal, and 80 grit, so it'll get a bite into that metal and stay. So what I'm going to do, after I take that picture, I'm going to go and sand all this down to metal and hit it with 80 grit. That'll give the Bondo something to grab onto. Thought you might get a kick out of this, because people are complaining about the Bondo new can with no instructions or anything. Now granted, it has a QR code you can scan to get the instructions. But the old can literally had instructions right on it. Now they've got, well, just room for all the warnings in the different languages. Unless you do this all the time, I highly suggest make notes, because this stuff is only good. So when you mix it, make sure you mix it right, and the more hardener you use, the faster it's going to set. If you use their recommendations, it's 3 to 4 minutes working time, and that's not a lot. Then you got 20 minutes for the cure time, and don't just think you're going to put this on one night and then go and work on it the next morning. It'll be hard as a rock. So you want to give it that cure time, and as soon as you can start sanding it to rough shape it, go for it, because this will get really, really hard. The kneading of the hardener, it's just like you would do with your thread locker. It's basically you're trying to mix it up inside here. Stirring of the filler, use something like this, and you're just literally stirring it. Just kind of mix it up a little bit. Now this will not get hard on its own. Well, it takes years, literally. I've marked 3 inches, which happens to be pretty close to what that is. I'm going to put a little 3-inch, and this is coated cardboard. It's not going to soak it up. I'm going to put 3-inch circle, put a line across it, just short of 3 inches. All right, that's a little more than the 3 inches. Just like in every other video you see, you're just mixing it without stirring. And you want to get that blue all through it. Probably shouldn't do it over your hood that you're working on. They make it look easy in the videos, but look at that, there's still blue there. Still blue that needs to get it, and I've got some bubbles there you can see. Okay, there we're good. And you really should wear gloves. Yeah. And you want to press this in fairly firm. On this first coat, because it's got to go into those 80 grit grooves. A little harder than being a DIY person than it is in the videos for the pros. I've got everything I wanted covered because I went wide. You want to go, I like to go at least an inch or 2 wider. Okay, now I'm gonna go clean this up. Oh, and I want to start a timer, 20 minutes. As soon as I can start sanding, I'm gonna start sanding. And you will notice this isn't all nice and smooth like you see on the videos. Now this is the Bondo brand, it's cheap. What is it, Evercoat? It's probably an easier brand to work with, honestly, but it's also more expensive. So in 20 minutes. The instructions say to use 80. You can actually use even 36 grit to start. If you find it's really hard to get anything off, just move to a coarser grit. I'm going to knock off some of the obvious high places with this 60. And I actually got this set to the curvature. And I will eventually do the X pattern. There we go. With it. So I used a guide coat to see where we're at. Now, guide coats don't really stick to metal. They'll stick inside the little scratches from the grit on the sandpaper, but that's it. So you really don't see it on the metal. Here, that is roughness. I think I can just sand that out more. Same here. This, though, is going to need some more. I can either use the glaze putty, or I can put a little more Bondo. It's really close. This, I think, just needs sanded more. Same with this bottom section. This is really close. Definitely the glaze and spot putty can take care of that. Decided I needed some more in this section right here. I might put a touch over that and that and that. Of course, I could use glazing putty for that. Anyway, I made a smaller pool, and I just put the line across the length of the pool, in my case just short of it. I'm using this clean section of the cardboard. And again, the more hardener you use, the blue stuff, the faster it's going to cure. When I sanded it back to 80, I put 80 grit scratches back in it. So I want to push fairly hard to get it into the grit, the scratches in the metal. Not really laying down as nice as I'd like. All right, 20 minutes. All right, I left it about 25 minutes this time. By the way, the thinner it is, the quicker it'll cure. The thicker it is, the longer it'll take, because you got to let the bottom, the inside, cure as well. All right, sanded it. It's at 320. I sanded around it a little bit too. It's now nice and smooth. Now the Bondo still has some little spots in it that I'm gonna have to hit with some glaze and putty. But it is nice and flat as well. It's a curve. It's even a convex curve. So, but it is accurate to the body panel what it should be. And I wiped it with some rubbing alcohol. And I can see that I probably need to do that again. One thing about this particular product, it sprays horribly. Look at that. It's like no coverage. Now granted, it's high build, but you know, what is it, an inch wide? And if there's any breeze, half of it goes bye-bye. So be aware. This is just the first coat. So I got that pretty good. Now I'm working on this. When I was using the power sander orbital, it dug in a little bit, so it was rough. So I'm sanding that out with some 320. And that smoothed out, then I'll hit it, spray with some that high build primer. In this spot here, I can fill just barely. So I'm going to sand also there. I'm going to hit it with some high build primer, just like I did here. Then we'll sand those out. And the body lines, careful on your body lines. These actually aren't too bad. I sanded on them some. It looks worse than it is, but I will probably put a little bit of high build right here. And then the key to these is when you sand, you can use the tape and all that, you know. Definitely, if you can do that, do it. It helps. What I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be sanding and keeping the block from rolling over the edge. I may have to go to a smaller one because this actually goes, I don't know if you can see it, down then up. So it's and then it comes over flat, then drops again. And it's this line that I got. I was sloppy and took a little more of the old paint off than I probably should have. Now, if I was going down to metal, this would not be an issue. So made some more progress. So here where I had been using a block and it cut right there because there's a little hump on both sides of the hood here, and it had cut in, so I had to use a little filler. Got a touch more to do there maybe. And I used 120 on the block to remove material, and then I did 320 to try to smoothen it out a little bit. Got rid of the pinholes. Still a little rough, needs some more sanding. So anywhere that it breaks through the metal, you're gonna have to hit it with a direct to metal primer again. And so I'm going to 320, another spot, and then we'll take it to 600 because this is a pearl. A couple tips on trying to get scratches out, so the like 120 scratches with a 320. So you're told to do the X pattern when sanding. That's great, but it actually, the key to that is the fact that you're sanding across your previous scratches. Well, if you're having a hard time telling if you got the 120 scratches out and you've been sanding in an X, switch to a cross pattern, and you can see the scratches, sanding marks, are now going this direction. Anything that's not going this direction is deeper. Right here, those scratches right there, they're deeper than what my 320 was taken out. So it'll need a little more work. If you're sanding and your sandpaper is looking like this, yeah, you're getting stuff caught in it. It's not quite dry yet. The high fill primer is really easy to sand. Go easy with it. Nice and light. Hopefully you remember where you sprayed some more. If you did forget, well, you still want to do a full sand with guide coat. So now I'm going through the whole thing, filling. Be surprised what you can tell by filling. If you missed any spots on the sanding, should feel nice and smooth with the 600 grit. How do I know if I've sanded enough on the little spots that have high build primer or even body filler for that matter? Well, first of all, use a long block of some sort, depending on your surface. And I ended up sanding some more on this one. And you can see that it's now blending in with that surface around it. This one is large, but you can see, again, it's blending in with the surface around it. All right, let's do this dry coat. This is going to do and it is messy, probably should wear gloves. It's going to get on whatever you're wearing, probably everything around it. Anyway, you're just going to spread this around. Okay, this is going to stick in to any scratches, and then when we start sanding, it's going to show us scratches and low spots. Now I will tell you that it's a lot easier to see stuff when the base is same color, one color I should say, preferably not black. Just spread it around. All right, hopefully I won't embarrass myself on this part. All right, so the purpose of this is to look for scratches and for low spots or high spots. If it starts while you're sanding with your 600 grit, if a spot jumps out, then it's a high spot. As in, so this is higher and that is lower. So we really need to fill this in if you're wanting it to be nicely flat. This assumes you're using a board that's flat. And you just keep doing this till you've covered the whole, in this case, hood. By the way, paint, body fillers and stuff don't really stick to dry coat. So before you actually paint or primer or anything like that, you got to get the dry coat completely off with, if it doesn't sand off, with alcohol. So it's looking pretty good. those low spots I was able to sand out most of it. Right here I am going to add a little more high fill primer. Hit that again, and everything else, I think that's just the primer color that was underneath it. Everything else was good, at least within my standards. Now I'll blow this off, then I'm gonna clean it with alcohol mix again, and if I find any metal, I think I did hit some metal right here. Anyway, oh, there's some metal. So I'm gonna hit that with some primer again, some direct metal primer. Then I will do the whole, just do a little more high fill primer right in this section, just to try to get that right. I'll be able to see it better after I clean it off. But that's the process, just keep working it. It's I've lost count of how many times I've gone over it my final time, and then I find another little spot or more. So we are really close though. And I'm finding this little block here. This works really well on a hood, at least, that has so many contours. And I'm not pressing down hard. Let the sandpaper do the work. And don't stop at the same spot here or you'll dig in. Now you might be wondering why I'm not wet sanding. Well, you can wet sand. You got wet dry paper, that's fine. However, what I found personally is that wet sanding makes it a lot harder for me to see where I am in the process, so I don't get as good of a look at the paint and the body work that I'm doing. So I tend to dry sand. It is all sanded to 600. It is all smooth. You may be looking at those lines and it's like they don't look straight. Well, it's what the guide coat's for, because I got different colors of primer and stuff in the base coat, but they're actually, with the guide coat, I know that there's no high-low spots and it's pretty even. I did use a scuff pad carefully, don't put a lot of pressure, and it's just the what is that, a 600 grit supposedly one, just to put a nice curve on the line there. And same over here again. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to wipe it off. Use a little bit of, see, every time you look at your panel you're going to find something. So right here is kind of a slightly rough spot. I'll hit that again with 600. Then I'm going to take and just wipe it down with the alcohol mixture. Probably don't have to, because first thing I'm going to do when I go to paint is wait for it, hit it all with 600 grit just to make sure it's fresh. Necessary, maybe not, but also doesn't hurt. And I'll store it here for a few weeks until I get time to paint it, and that'll be a whole other video. So I hope that was helpful. If so, please like, subscribe, comment, and good luck with your project. Quick tip using a scuff pad. So people tell you that you're going to put grooves in the paint from your fingers. Well, one, double it up. Always double it. It should be folded at least once. Second, when you're sanding, don't put your fingertips down and then do this. Not even this. You don't want your fingertips being the only weight on it. You want your whole palm, preferably, or at least fingers. Even pressure. And again, try to avoid this direction. Do this direction and let the scuff pad do the work. This is not going to level it. and you don't want to take too much out with this. This is just to get the nice fine lines in there so that the next sprayed on surface will hold to them. Another trick, actually, there you go. Yep, use a scuff pad. That'll pull it right off.